As always, I'll start with a quick review of our last performance. Really, I don't know that I got a lot to add other than what I said post-game. It's good to go into an environment against good people and face the adversity associated with that and find ways to secure victory. I just think there's growth in it for individuals. There's growth in it for the collective. Certainly, we got things to clean up in all three phases. We lack fluidity in some instances in all three phases, things that are low-hanging fruit for us as we lean in on this week's work. But largely, I just love the collective mentality of the group, the fight displayed, the way that they were engaged and locked in and really, unflinching throughout. It was a close ball game. Obviously, at one point we were down by 10, but I never felt a lack of belief or a lack of focus individually or collectively. Guys realize how you get out of those circumstances is to make plays. It's the same things really that put you in those circumstances, the lack of playmaking or strategy at times, because coaching is a component of it as well. And we're always willing to own those things and remain focused on the task at hand and the opportunities that are ahead. And I think our guys live that out, and so there's growth in that, obviously, because as we continue through this journey, we're going to be in similar circumstances. We're in a competitive circumstance this week. Can't say enough about the efforts of a lot of people. The new guys have gotten attention, and rightfully so. To provide immediate contribution is a cool thing. I'm excited about watching those guys continuing to grow within our culture and find their space in it, and hopefully that playmaking continues, talking about Mike Williams and Preston Smith specifically. But it was also exciting to get Cam Sutton back, and he played some weighty down football for us and some sub packages and some one-dimensional moments, man, and excited about his role potentially growing and finding his place in it. It was good to have Zach Frazier back. I didn't think he showed a lot of rust, particularly for a guy that doesn't have a great deal of playing experience. And so was pleased with how he got back on the moving train. To just name a few specific instances, Tyler was back in the special teams game. We had some challenging times kind of in October from a player availability standpoint. But when you smile in the face of it and you start to get some of these guys back, it really creates an awesome challenge from a coach's perspective to decide who to utilize and how to divide the labor up. Be remiss if I didn't mention Ben in the special teams game as well. I think he got on that loose punt down the field and was obviously a critical play in the game to minimize the effect of our botched punt fake. And so I'm just appreciative of all the contributions. I thought it was appropriate maybe to acknowledge those in particular because they're new to us, and that was exciting. From a health standpoint, you can characterize Alex Highsmith as out this week, and we'll take it week to week in terms of his availability. Excited about getting him back to us ASAP, but he won't be available this week. But it, makes it even cooler that we have a guy like Preston Smith under those circumstances. Pretty comfortable that Herbig is going to be back this week. He was at the doorstep of it a week ago, so I think it's reasonable to be able to include him and some other guys that have missed some time. We'll just kind of let their participation be our guide in terms of whether or not they get back on the train or not. Guys like Corey Trice, for example. We had some guys that went down in game and didn't return. Diontae Jackson, I just walked by. He feels good today, but feeling good today and executing in totality tomorrow is two different things. And so we'll live it day by day in terms of some of those instances, and they might be limited at the early portions of this thing from a prep standpoint, but we're not anticipating a lack of availability kind of in any of those guys, Naj included. We'll see what Wednesday looks like, but we're pretty comfortable as I stand here today that we'll include those guys in our planning at the latter part of the week and have those guys ready for action. Now, obviously, on to Baltimore. It's really cool to be in these games. not because it's them, but because they're a good team. This time of year, you want to be leaning in on five-star matchups and being a component of it. You're in five-star matchups not only because of the quality of people that you're playing, but also what you've done. And we respect that component of it, and we're excited about that component of it. And we just want to continue to sharpen our sword for these battles, to find a way to prepare ourselves and put our best foot forward and find a way to win, and search for more. And so for this week, we acknowledge, man, Baltimore is a really good team. And historically, we've had some awesome matchups, man. There's always AFC North ramifications, and I just respect this rivalry. I think one of the awesome components of this rivalry is the continuity in the organizations, man. I've been on my job a long time. Harbs has been on his job a long time. And I think that adds a texture and history to it. And so that's something that is an honor to be a part of, and we're just simply writing the latest chapter this week with some new faces for us and new faces for them as well. Guys get an opportunity to be a component of this thing, and even some guys flipping sides, guys like Patrick Queen and Moon being on this side of it, just like Arthur Millette a year or so ago, moving to their side of it. But I just think that that's a component of it, man, this intimacy in this relationship. We're highly familiar with their players. They're highly familiar with ours. And when you have that level of familiarity, sometimes guys play on both sides. I think Chris Wormley, for example, is back on their practice squad last time I checked. And so excited about it. I'll start first with their offense. Mr. Jackson, obviously, is at the sticks. He's a significant challenge a week ago, not trying to compare the two, just acknowledging that we face another hot offense with a multi-dimensional quarterback and a really good running game and an offense that's ringing up the scoreboard. And so if I know anything about our group, that fires them up. But it fires them up in the appropriate way. I expect them to be singularly focused on prep. I expect to see a group that's really locked in every prep environment, whether it's classroom or walkthrough or practice. And usually when we do that, we'll position ourselves to be what we desire to be. But there's a lot of moments between now and game time, and I'm really excited about doing it with them. On the defensive side of the ball, it's still Ravens defense, man. They're tops, or if not the top run defense in the league. I know a lot's been written and said about their pass defense, but to be quite honest with you, when I turn the tape on, I don't see negligence. I see a group that's definitively up on people, and a lot of people are getting out of their personalities and are simply somewhat one-dimensional and throwing the ball 40 and 50 times against them. And I think that's probably the most significant reason why they're 32nd in the league versus the pass in terms of yards per game. It's the circumstantial component of it. I don't see guys out of place. They got really good players. At safety, Kyle Hamilton, I think, is playing as good as anybody in the business. Marlon Humphrey, obviously, is a bell cow, not only in terms of his coverage ability, but his ability to get the ball. Highly productive in any and all circumstances. There's not a defensive package that doesn't include him and what he's capable of. And obviously, they got a group that's really capable of getting out and getting after you up front. They've invested a lot in the acquisition of that group. Oweh and those guys, man, recent draft picks, high-round draft picks, veteran acquisitions like Van Oy. They've even acquired a pass rush specialist in Chuck Smith in recent years. And all of that is really evident on their tape. They're highly skilled and organized in terms of how they distribute their rushmen. They really get after you in one-dimensional passing moments, and we better do a really good job of staying on schedule and working to minimize those moments. And in special teams, obviously, with Harbs' background being in that phase of the game, they've been historically strong in that phase. And when you got specialists like Tuck, that's something to be weighed from a strategy standpoint. His range and accuracy is well documented, and it always has been a factor in terms of how we play certain situations and in terms of how the game plays out. If they want to deny you kickoff return opportunities, obviously he can put the ball in the stands, for example. And so we're highly familiar with them, but we don't seek or find comfort in that because we know that they're highly familiar with us. It's Steelers, Ravens, and so let's get at it. I'll pause and open it up for questions.
Mike, I just want to go back to the fake punt for a minute. Considering where and when you called it, was that as much a attitude center and message center as anything?
No, I was trying to get the first down. But, sidebar, yes, because, we're just not going to allow people to do unorthodox and potentially unsound things against us. I'm not going to allow people to overstress our punt protection unit by leaving people uncovered. We got people that are capable of throwing and catching the football. We don't view it as a gadget or trick play, to be quite honest with you. That discussion and that work didn't start last week in preparation for the Commanders. It's what we do. It's steeped in our culture. We've been working that since the spring, and so our attitude about it is probably a little bit different than you might think because of that. We're not hoping and wishing. It's nothing mystical. This is routine for us as, a base passing play, a running play, or a base defense. We got that level of comfort in it, but all of that being said, we didn't execute it in that moment, and that's why I took responsibility for it, certainly.
Mike, since you saw him in last October, where have you seen Lamar really evolve as a quarterback?
They'd probably be better equipped to answer that than me personally. I just respect what he's capable of doing. I see continual evolution in him, and I've seen that since they drafted him. There's always a component of his game that's moving forward, and I just think it speaks to not only his talent, but his approach to business and their approach to business. He's got a unique skill set. He and they always appear to be evolving in terms of maximizing that skill set, and I just have a lot of respect for it.
Mike, you mentioned Patrick Queen is one of the guys on both sides of this rivalry. Last week against the Commanders, he was all over the place. How has he kind of settled into this defense, and how does he set a tone for that group?
I think it's continual. I think he has shown more comfort with each passing week, and I think his production and consistency of play reflects that. I think it's reasonable to expect that to continue. In terms of his comfortability, he's always been comfortable. He's a guy that's comfortable within his skin. He realizes what we brought him here to do, and he's embraced that in terms of being a leader and hub of communication. Got no issue with that. I just think that over time it's reasonable to expect him to play faster, to see his talent show up more consistently, and him to play with the edge that we appreciate as he gets more comfortable within what it is that we do, how we put plans together, how he marches himself toward a 6 or 7 day preparation cycle. I'm excited about all of that moving forward.
He's talked about wanting to be a villain in this rivalry. How do you see him kind of set the tone with that edge that you just mentioned he has?
He's going to have plenty of opportunity for that, I promise you. There's a lot of villains on both sides of this rivalry.
I'm sorry. When you look at the three different types of catches from George the other day, the touchdown, the sideline one, the slant and run, is that an indication of his versatility and his involvement as a wide receiver?
I don't know about evolution. I think that skill set has been on display since day zero. He's just a very talented guy. He's got unique body control and hand-eye coordination and fine motor skills, and very rarely do you see him uncomfortable spatially. And so we appreciate it, but I don't think anybody on our football team or within our organization that see him do things like that routinely, both in stadium and in practice settings, are surprised by it.
Mike, how quickly do you anticipate Mike Williams getting a larger workload? Obviously, he was acquired in the middle of the week last week, expected a limited snap count. Is there a chance he could see a larger workload?
I think that'll be continual, and I think it's reasonable to expect his workload to increase. The rate in which it increases and all of those things are determined by factors I really don't know the answer to. I'm still getting to know him and how he learns, and specifically the detailed component of his skill set in terms of how to best utilize it and position him to help us. And so we'll be evolving in that way. He'll be evolving in that way, not only this week, but in the upcoming weeks. And I think it's, safe to say the same for a guy like Preston. Less so with a guy like Cam Sutton because we have a shared experience with him in the past.
When it comes to Russell, you made the call last month to bring him in and start him. What parts of his game have come to fruition that you envisioned back then when you made that call that it's like, hey, this is what we expect he'll be able to do in our offense?
I think he's still writing that story.
Up until now, at this point in the schedule. But, now that you've got Russ worked in, the rookie offensive lineman worked in, the trade acquisitions are here. Do you feel like this has actually been beneficial for your team to now get the North with your team fully in place like this?
I don't care. I'll play them whenever they schedule us. We got no control over the schedule. Our goal is to beat everybody. But specifically, week to week, we get singularly focused on this week's opponent. And so I'd be making it up if I told you I cared about the schedule or when we face people. I don't.
Mike, I don't believe you mentioned Calvin Austin and the injuries. He fine after the
Yeah, I don't anticipate any issue with him. Maybe he's slowed at the early portions of the week. I put him in that category with Diontae Jackson. I just failed to mention his name.
How has the addition of Derrick Henry changed how much attention you can afford to put on Lamar Jackson with the mobility and him running?
I think that you can speculate on that. I don't think that you'll really get a feel for that or a texture of that until you get in venue with them. And so I understand the nature of your question. I acknowledge that there's a balance to be struck there. We'll try to strike it from a planning standpoint, but I really feel like that is a field thing. I think that you'll discover that in stadium.
How much is Russell's ability to recognize what defenses are doing pre-snap, whether it's disguises or just things that you guys opens up parts of your offense that maybe are yielding more results for guys like George?
I think you can lump that into his experience bucket. And that's one of the many points that I was talking about when I was talking there's a myriad of reasons why.
Herbig being on a pitch count, and who do you anticipate starting back or
I have no idea. Herbig has not gotten himself fully in the boat yet, and so I'd be speculating on both ends of that. The level of the pitch count and how we divide the labor up, all of that will be determined after he gets really solid with being an inclusive component of the plan, and we get solid with it as well.
Mike, you clearly have a lot of respect for Lamar Jackson. Just what do you remember about when you learned that he was going to be in this division and you were going to have to play this guy twice a season?
I'd be making something up, to be honest with you. He's been in it a while now. I respect his skill set. I wanted to get to know him, not only for us, but just in general. Sometimes when I see talent, forget whether or not we're interested in it, I try to get close to it in the draft process just so I'm not surprised by it. And that's the mentality that I had regarding him. I think maybe we went out to eat the night before his pro day. I was at his pro day. I just wanted to see what that looked like up close. And so that's what I think about when I think about how he came into the league, that I got active in the draft process because I didn't want to be surprised by it. And I remember less about reactions to him going to Baltimore.
Coach, Cam Sutton's first game back, just how would you assess how he did?
I thought he was Cam Sutton, man. I thought he was versatile. We moved him around some. He did a nice job communicating. He was engaged. He was a component of defense and special teams. He's a good teammate.
Mike, you mentioned guys on both sides. What will it be like for you to face Diontae, and what challenge does he present for you guys?
To be honest with you, I hadn't thought a lot about it. He's not on a lot of their video, and so, at this stage of the week, I don't know that I've weighed, what he might mean to the matchup. They got more significant pieces with larger roles that are occupying my attention at this part of the week.
Mike, you were talking about the history of this rivalry. What do you usually see from guys that are introduced to the rivalry in terms of some of the newer guys on your team?
I challenge people to find their space in it. I think that's the sentiment or the attitude I have regarding the new guys, that these waters run deep and a lot of guys have carved a place out for themselves in the history of this thing. And they've come to us in a variety of ways. I'm sure at some point I'll talk to guys about Isaac Redmond being an undrafted free agent from Bowie. And everybody remembers the significant play he made in the latter portions of a game in Baltimore one time to get us out of a stadium. There's a lot of those stories. Guys like Beanie and others, man, need to hear that so they can know that they're capable as well. I think that's what the history of this thing has taught me in terms of how to introduce new guys to it. I just simply tell stories of other regular men who are willing and capable and how it played out for them.
Joey got penalized pretty often in the last game. What's your message to him this week? What's your challenge to him?
I don't know that it is a message. We're always working to be clean. Last week was last week. He's done an awesome job for the totality of the season. And so usually it takes two to make a pattern for me before I get active. And so I'm not going to overreact to last week.
You talk about the familiarity between teams. Do you use that as an opportunity to try to maybe zig where you've zagged in the past, or put something different in just because they are so familiar with you?
There'll be a bunch of zigging and zagging on both sides. That's just the nature of this thing. It's a component of that familiarity that I was talking about, certainly.
Your increased ability to hit some deep plays, get some chunk plays of late, especially since Russ has gotten in there. Does one hand wash the other there based in terms of some decision-making you might have on defense to take a little bit more risk, or like you talked about earlier with the fake punt in that circumstance?
No, we're going to take risk on defense and special teams anyway. That's just how we live.
Lamar's such a unique skill set. Does having a guy like Justin Fields on your team help you in any way sort of prepare for all the things?
No.
Anyone else? All right.
All right, thanks.